James Cook, running back out of Georgia, is the next prospect we're going to talk about here. 5'11", 199 pounds. A little bit older of a player. Going to be 22 and a half by the time the season kicks off. 40-yard dash, 4.42, which is pretty good. 124-inch broad, 124-inch, 33-inch vertical, 124-inch broad jump. I wrote those in the wrong spots. When you look at it, and we all know, if you don't know, this is Dalvin Cook's little brother. So
what?
James Cook. I mean, we know this, but other people might not know that James Cook from Georgia is Dalvin Cook's little brother. And I mean, you know what? The one thing you see that they both do pretty similar is like the way they cut, right? Like they both cut. They make some really good cuts. They're pretty similar to that. But he is truly Dalvin Cook's little brother because he doesn't have the size. He doesn't have the power. You know, as a pro, this is a guy who makes fantastic cuts. When you watch him, he's just one of those natural running backs, right? When you watch him play, he's a natural runner. He's smooth with the ball in his hands. Shows pretty good speed, patience. Has good speed, as his 40 time obviously showed. Gets to the outside pretty well, and that's where he lives, on the outside. This is a guy that's not going to live inside whatsoever. He's a really good route runner, so he has good hands. So all of his value comes in as a PPR running back in my eyes, because this was a guy was just a change of pace back. This is a guy, yeah.
It's like your fifth one on James Cook alone.
There really should be a drinking game for how.
Yeah. Well,
if Rich
says
this
will
is
die.
you take
why
a
don't you just
shot.
edit some of that out and do some good producing? I mean, we look better.
I don't want you dying.
Shots would be,
James
he'd
Cook.
be dead. Everyone would be dead.
Okay, well, I do talk.
The way
fast. I
you
can't help
talk,
myself.
it's impossible
Give me a
to
micro
edit.
machine, quick. James Cook. James Cook, somebody who is not only is going to be a change of pace back at the next level. He was a change of pace back his entire career in college. This is James Cook. James Cook is somebody who's never seen more than 12 carries in a game in college football. He's somebody who only had 10 carries in 5 of his 46 career games. I saw that stat somewhere. I think that was a Lance Zierlein stat. I saw him put out there that he only hit 10 carries in 5 of his 46 career games. He's somebody that his build's just not there for what he is. He's a slight build PPR running back. So he's going to come in like that, kind of like the same thing, like that Kenneth Gainwell, a speedster, has good speed, catch the football, get the outside. He's going to need to be an outside zone runner, but he's always going to be playing from the outside. So he's strictly a change of pace back, which in today's NFL is not a terrible thing to have, right? Because there's a chance that James Cook is going to get an opportunity to get more carries than he deserves due to an injury and not be that change of pace back. We saw guys like Nyheim Hines come in and kind of shock us later in his career, how he was able to run between the tackles and put up some good running back 2 number games. So I think James Cook, with his PPR ability and his route running and his speed and his ability to get to the outside and how smooth of a runner he is, I think in today's NFL, he does offer that potential for a year here and there to be a running back too. As the running backs start to go down with injuries and with his skill set, I don't think just because we talk about him as being a change of pace running back that he's tossed by the wayside. I think he's a 3rd round pick at worst in your rookie draft, potentially in the right spot, a late 2nd round pick. I think he offers a skill set that he does offer some pretty good dynasty value. And I think there's a couple running backs like him that are going to be some nice dynasty assets that you put on your taxi squad, put in the back end of your roster. You get too many injuries. He offers the potential to get you those 9 to 15 fantasy points, depending on if he scores touchdowns, a couple times a year. So I think James Cook, when I watch him, is a nice player that I want on my dynasty roster, but where your expectations will always be low.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. Obviously he's a guy that he's always averaged over 6 yards per carry, but I don't think you're ever going to want to give him a bunch of carries. He's a guy that he's always going to live in that, do you give him 5 to 7 carries a game type of thing, and then you're throwing him 6 or 7 passes? I think that's kind of going to be his role, because he's a less is more from a running strictly running back type of situation. You're not going to want to do more than probably 6 or 7 carries between the tackles, or most likely on a outside zone type of a run, because I think that's just how you would use him most effectively. At 199 pounds, he doesn't have like any sort of real power element to his game at the college level, let alone, once he gets to the NFL. So I think you nailed most of that on the head. I don't have a ton extra to add on there. I think you got his attributes nailed down pretty good there, Rich.
I didn't come in as a huge fan of James Cook overall. He was somebody that I did like quite a bit as like a college player. Enjoyed watching him play, and I knew he had pretty decent high school pedigree coming in. He was a pretty highly ranked recruit, but the size is always going to be an issue with him, and he just doesn't really break tackles. That's the difference between a guy like him and a guy like Tyler Beatty. I think James Cook, everything that he does well, Tyler Beatty's not far off from. I think James Cook's a little bit better receiver, but everything else he does better than James Cook. And so I think they're going to be drafted with similar capital in your rookie drafts, just because people are going to recognize the name of James Cook more often. He played at a bigger program. You mentioned his brother, like all of that kind of stuff. Like, I think he's just going to be better well received by most people. And he had some big moments in some big games in the national championship game, and those kinds of things do stick in people's minds. Whereas Tyler Beatty, most people before the draft process, including me, and before this season, a guy that plays Devy, I didn't know who he was. I did not know who he was in 2021. Like, I wasn't aware of him. So I think you're going to be able to capitalize on that. I think James Cook is fine, but I would be shocked if he is a day 2 prospect. I think he's definitely a day 3 prospect. And
you know what, Gary? I think why? No, maybe, but I think a big thing too
maybe
is
because
like,
the name.
If you see a guy like him that's a PPR guy, like you're like, how is his pass protection? And his pass protection is just not that good either. So that hurts him. Like, hey, you got to be a PPR back, you're going to be on third downs, but your pass protection's not that great. Like, and we're going to use you just on like screens and jet sweeps and things along those lines. So that does hurt him a little bit as well. Like you said, his size to come in there and be able to block, that kind of puts a little dent in his value as well. And you say Tyler Beatty. When I saw his tape, Tyler Beatty clearly ahead of James Cook.
Yep. So I think he's fine, but he's not anything special for me.
Yeah, I have James Cook as the best pass catching back in this class, which I think it's kind of what we all just said here. I have him right behind Tyler Beatty, just like you, Garrett. So he's a space player. That's what he is. It's what he'll be used at the next level. And if he's able to offer us some PPR upside on our fantasy rosters, then we'll love that. I think he's a late third, early fourth
one
round
thing
pick
that I
in
did
the
want to
rookie
bring
drafts.
up, because no one else said anything about it. I saw Jim Nagy talk about it from the Senior Bowl. Now, James Cook didn't end up doing anything there, but he said that this was a guy that could win even as a slot receiver. And then we found out that he ran a lot of drills with the wide receivers during his pro day. So I that's something I am keeping in the back of my mind. We've seen a couple players that have done that recently, kind of transfer from being a running back to a receiver, or vice versa, being a receiver to a running back. We're seeing those positions of slot guys and scat backs and stuff like that become a little more fluid. That would make him more interesting if he is going to be used in that capacity more often. But they're just, those players are typically tough to trust on a week in, week out basis.
I was going to say, we've seen a lot more of it, but their dynasty value is like non-existent. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the usage isn't there at all. When you become those kind of receivers and everything like that, like, you're just not a dynasty asset at that point.
Unless your name's Debo.
Debo.
Yeah, but that was a stud muffin. We gave a rookie round 1 grade when we saw him at South Carolina. We knew that guy was a stud. No doubt about it. Go back and listen to tape.
Yeah, I think there's a reality.
Absolutely.
James Cook earns like a McKissick role.
Absolutely. I think you'd be great in that
Man was a
role.
running back too last year.
You're just hoping that it's the right team, the right coach, and the right quarterback that's going to use him that way. That's always the tough part about those evaluations. Is we've seen a lot of comps to McKissick and James White and those kinds of players, but only so many of them actually go to teams that are going to use them that way, and that's what's tricky.